Before we get started, I just wanted to take a second and make sure that we introduce the team here who's going to be helping lead the session today. So my name is Jim Sander. I've probably met a lot of you, or you've joined similar sessions where we've had a chance to kind of meet virtually. I am the product marketing manager for the DESSA and just still work very closely directly with schools and districts all over the country to make sure that we understand exactly what everyone needs to make the most of the DESSA and DESSA resources. And I am lucky enough to be joined today by Dr. Lisa McCoo, who is our senior assessment strategist here at Riverside. Also very excited to have Jennifer Robitaille, who is our Director of Research and Development, and truly the expert on all things DESSA. And also my colleague, Katie Kaiser, who is a instructional designer here at Riverside. So you may know Katie if you've attended any of our live trainings in the past or upcoming this year. Um, I'm sure everyone here can relate basically this time of year where you're trying to kind of reflect and do your best to improve on maybe your experiences last school year. We do the same thing as we are collecting feedback and trying to make sure that the DESSA system is improved upon each year. Really just taking that time to see how we can improve the overall experience for all educators, students, families, organizations that are using the DESSA, making sure that we're incorporating as much feedback from all of our partners as possible, just to really inform how we're making any adjustments. And really excited today to share a lot of those improvements and new resources with you. We hope today will give you a chance to really think about how your own DESSA program could potentially just be leveled up for this school year, and specifically how these tools can help, as always, improve, just help you drive stronger student outcomes overall. So in addition to sharing the updates themselves to the DESSA system, we're also going to talk about some really helpful, high impact, and practical best practices that you can leverage this year. So before we uh, jump into the agenda, just wanted to make sure that we're inviting everyone in to participate with us today. So throughout today's session, we're going to have some pauses for discussion and reflection, and we're going to kick things off with that. Wanted to ask everyone, in that same spirit of reflection and improvement, especially using data to make those strategic decisions, wanted to check with everyone and feel free to put your answers in the chat as you've been looking at your DESSA data and maybe other similar data inputs. What is one thing that you're going to do differently this year based on your DESSA data? And as I said, please feel free to drop your responses in the chat. Oh, well, welcome, Holly. That's exciting. The good thing about being in sessions like this is that you'll be here with people who have all different ranges of experience using the DESSA. So I'm glad to have some fresh faces in the mix who are just preparing to launch their program for the first time this year. And I will just say, maybe people are feeling shy. That's totally fine. What we can do, the chat will be open throughout the session. For time's sake, I'm not going to take too much longer here. Oh, right when I say that is when the responses come in, of course. Uh, I see more consistent research-based tiered supports. That's awesome. Thank you, Amanda. Um, oh, I see, Tony, you're working up from a pilot. That's great to see as well. So hopefully you'll learn some helpful practices today. Oh, I love this, creating a menu of interventions. Lisa, you'll be excited about that one. A lot of times, as we know, we'll talk about this today. Sometimes the classroom teachers or whoever is actually implementing those lessons, they do need a little bit of a nudge to actually just take that next step in actually identifying and selecting the right strategies and interventions. So that's great to see. Awesome. I'll go ahead into the next slide here. Thank you everyone who broke the ice in the chat though. So for today, in addition to sharing all of those best practices, just wanted to start off with some back to school reminders about some new resources that everyone here will have access to. Then we're going to spend some time talking about, we're going to do our best to give as much detail as possible, but we have a lot to cover today. So if we're moving too quickly, feel free to drop questions in the chat and also reach out to your Riverside and DESSA partners on our end as well at any time if you need more information. These will be kind of some quick hits today because we have a lot to cover. But after those reminders, we're going to talk about our newest screener, DESSA SEIR. We're also going to then talk about the updated norms for the DESSA 2 High School Edition Student Self-Report. We're going to give a quick overview of our brand new AI-powered teacher tool, DESSA Insights Plus, and then we're going to talk about all the updates that went into our, speaking of those strategies and interventions and the foundational practices, we're going to share some updates for those. And then Katie's going to talk about some exciting new training options that are available this year. And then finally, we have an update about DESSA 2 parent ratings. So this is when I mentioned those back to school updates. I'm sure everyone here is familiar. There were some updates to your subscriptions this year. And one of the benefits of that is that every single partner that's using the DESSA is going to have access to additional resources this year that you may or may not have had access to in the past. So the first one that's going to be in your account is EdCert, which is our teacher-facing professional development program. It's a little bit different from the standard recommended trainings that everyone does. This one's really focused on making sure that all educators have the time to actually reflect and develop their own social and emotional competence. It's super important, not just for their own well-being, but also we know that if they are able to level up their own social and emotional competence, it's going to give them the ability to better model those skills in the classroom. And it's going to help them just understand how to teach those skills better because they're developing them themselves. The other thing that you'll have access to in the system this year are the data-driven recommendations. So in addition to the AI tool that's going to launch soon, everyone's going to have the ability to have automated recommendations for strategies and interventions based on the data that you are looking at. So an example of this would be if you are a teacher and you are looking at your entire class, the data-driven recommendations will automatically scan the data and give you recommendations for lessons that focus on existing strengths for students and some high priority competency specific areas to target that are in the need area. And then the last one here, everyone's going to now have access to the Tier 2 intervention programs, which are our in-depth targeted multi-week sequenced lessons. So those will all be available to everyone in the DESSA system this year. All right. The next update that we're going to talk about, you've probably heard about DESSA SEIR, but we're going to do a quick refresher on this today. This is our brand new screening tool. It stands for the Screener for Externalizing and Internalizing Risk. And just a quick overview of what it actually looks like. This is a student-completed screener, and it's available for grades 6 through 12. So basically, when a student is going through completing the DESSA student self-report, if you decide to activate DESSA SEIR, it'll just add an additional 10 items that are going to be screening for a broad range of social and emotional risks or concerns. And the reason it's important that those questions are just added on to the DESSA student self-report is that it's required that they complete the strength-based DESSA student self-report alongside DESSA SEIR. We'll talk more about why that's important in just a second. But basically, when a student completes this screener, it's going to deliver two distinct scores. One that's going to show internalizing concerns, and then one that's going to show externalizing concerns. And as you're reviewing individual student data, both DESSA SEIR data and the DESSA student self-report data will be available on that student's individual profile. So to take a step back of just to talk about why we ended up developing DESSA SEIR, I'm sure this is not surprising to everyone on this call, but there's just such a high prevalence of mental health concerns. And when you look at that combined with decades-long shortages of mental health providers, especially in school, we know that we need to take a more preventive and universal approach to better serve those students. And what that looks like, this is one of the practices we're sharing today. So everyone here, most likely, is already screening and assessing with the DESSA to make sure that you're using that strength-based data to inform your approach to student support. But research shows, you're seeing more and more evidence of this, that really promoting student well-being is best done through a risk and resilience framework. And basically what that's going to do is focus on two different factors. this is what you're already doing with the DESSA is identifying and developing those resilience skills or those protective factors in students. But with the addition of DESSA SEIR for students in middle and high school, you can also make sure that you're identifying potential risk factors so that you can get ahead in working to prevent them or mitigate them for the student. This is really important because we know that students who have those very well-developed resilience factors are much better positioned to navigate challenges and to mitigate and respond to those potential risk factors that may arise in their life as they're going through their educational career. So one thing I'm really excited about today is I actually have a chance to show you what the DESSA SEER data looks like in the DESSA system. This is brand new. So if you've been in any of our webinars previously, we didn't have this live yet, but now it is. This will be a really quick overview of this, but basically, if you're implementing DESSA SEER, that data is going to be available in the Data and Insights section, but you'll now see that you have this SEER risk report on the left side menu. So at a high level, I'm just going to run this report for the most recent rating window in my account. At a very high level, I mentioned those two distinct scores, the externalizing risk and the internalizing risk scores. So it's a little different from the DESSA data that you're used to because you would have to click back and forth here to see those separately because they're two distinct scores for each student. And as you can see here, this would be probably a pretty realistic view of what this data would look like at a high level, where most students that have participated in the screener didn't have any concerns for externalizing risks. But then we noticed that we have about 12% of students that actually did show up in the concern range for those externalizing risks. And I want to actually look at an individual student real quick. So this would be an example of a student who had completed the middle school self-report and DESSA SEER at the same time, but they don't yet have a teacher completed full DESSA. So on this student's individual profile here, I can see this overview of just the DESSA mini because they didn't score the need for instruction range on the teacher completed DESSA, so they didn't complete the full DESSA. But as you're going to see here, that would probably be a good idea to inform a support plan moving forward. On the student self-report, this student actually scored in the typical range with a T-score of 53. And on the externalizing score for DESSA SEER, there were no concerns, but there were some internalizing risks identified. So that might mean that this student is maybe having feelings of isolation or loneliness or just struggling internally with something that's going on in their life at that time. So when you look at the SEER report here for that student, you'll see over time, if you're screening and progress monitoring this, you can see the change in those scores over time. But because we've identified some concerns on the internalizing risk scale, this would be a good opportunity to actually look at their DESSA results, their DESSA student self-report results, to actually see in which areas they might need some additional support. So if we look at their most recent DESSA student self-report, because we've identified those potential internalizing concerns, it's really helpful to know exactly where they need some additional skill building. So we would probably want to focus on social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision making at this time, in addition to making sure that this student is being referred to a mental health professional within the school system. So you can really dig into and see exactly what might be kind of underlying those internalizing concerns. Because we just had time for a very quick overview of DESSA SEER today. But if you want to learn more information, we're definitely going to invite you. We have a webinar coming up in October where we're going to dig more into this. But if you're looking at this and you're in need of that mental well-being screener this school year, maybe haven't had a chance to actually add it to your account, this is already included with the cost of your DESSA subscription, as long as you have those middle school and high school licenses included. But if you'd like to learn more about this, I would definitely encourage you to scan this QR code, and we'll make sure that your partnership team member or your success team member reaches out so that they can answer any additional questions that you may have about DESSA SEER. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Jennifer now.
Great, thanks, Jim. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to give some updates on the second edition of the high school student self-report, which has just launched. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so the first thing that has been updated with the DESSA high school student self-report is that we have new post-pandemic norms. We collected the new normative sample just this past fall. It includes over 50,000 students across grades 9 through 12. And those students in that sample closely approximate demographics of students across the United States in terms of things like gender, race, ethnicity, age, socioeconomic status, geographic region of residence, and special education status. And as a reminder, norms are important because they are what's used to create the scores, which are provided with the assessment. And so this helps ensure scores are reflective of students in today's world. So we're really excited about this normative update. You can go to the next slide. The second thing we've updated relates to content. Specifically, we made some updates to the items, as well as how students actually go about completing the assessment. And our goal in making these content-related changes is to simplify things for students who are taking the assessment and simplify things for the educators, administrators who are helping to oversee the implementation of the assessment in their schools and districts, as well as who are looking at the data and using it to inform and guide practice. So one thing we have done is we've made some updates to the items that are assessed by the high school student self-report. We made sure to include and focus on items that are measuring skills, positive behaviors that are most relevant for students today. The updated assessment includes 50 items. It previously was 55 items. And all of the items are now worded as I statements. And you can see an example of one of the items on the screen here. We also changed the instructions. So if you've previously used the original version of the high school student self-report, you know that it asks students to reflect on the past 4 weeks and rate their behaviors based on that 4-week period. And we heard that that could be difficult for some students. And so we've updated it to simply ask students to do their best to rate themselves. In making these changes, we have now better and more closely aligned the high school student self-report with the middle school student self-report, which we believe will make things just much more streamlined and easier for educators and administrators who are looking at this data and who are using the assessment in practice. And then the last major update I'd like to highlight is on the next slide is the the competencies which are being measured by this assessment. So uh, if you're familiar with the original high school student self-report, it provided scores across 7 competencies, and we've updated this to measure 6 competencies, and these will be the same 6 competencies that are measured by the middle school student self-report, as well as the DESSA 2, which was released last school year. So the major changes here, there's still quite a bit of overlap, but the major changes here are previously the original assessment provided one combined score for the self-awareness and optimistic thinking competencies. We've now separated those out, so you get scores for both self-awareness and optimistic thinking. We've also combined the original competencies of self-management and goal-directed behavior. Both those skills are still being assessed with the new assessment, but they're both falling now under the self-awareness competency. Social awareness and relationship skills haven't changed. And then the final competency, we've combined personal responsibility and decision making into a responsible decision making competency. And again, we believe that pulling these together and updating and aligning across the middle school and high school student self-report will make things easier for both students in looking at their own data, as well as educators and administrators who are using the data to inform practice. And then the last thing I'd like to share is a resource. So you'll be receiving this resource after the webinar if you haven't already received it. This is a transition checklist that is just providing some helpful information describing the key changes with the new updated high school student self-report. It provides a checklist of helpful reminders of things to consider to prepare for using this assessment this school year, and also provides a bit of guidance for comparing scores between the original assessment and the new assessment. So look for this resource coming after the webinar. And I will turn it back over to Jim.
Thanks, Jen. So, in the spirit of continuing the conversation, focusing specifically on high school, we wanted to just share another reflection question for people to respond to in the chat. So, first, I just want to ask everyone to take a second and think about which DESSA skills already align very well with your existing high school initiatives and priorities. So that might be something like you're really focusing on a portrait of a graduate framework. We know some of our district partners even use this to help make sure that they're actually accurately measuring things that are included in like a student code of conduct. Or maybe something if you're really focusing this year on a college and career readiness program. Just take a second and think about those competencies that Jen was just talking about for the updated high school student self-report, and which of those are maybe already in discussion as being a big priority based on either DESSA data or other data that you're looking at. And then in the chat, in the spirit of being strength-based, I just wanted to check in with everyone and actually see which of those skills do you think are already strongest for your high school students? And if you don't work directly with high school students in your role, feel free to share this even if you're not necessarily thinking specifically about high school students. We'd love to hear from you as well. Oh, I love that. So I can see that, Holly, you've identified optimistic thinking as a priority with your tier one focus as part of your SEL program. That's awesome. That's why we include it on the DESSA. All right, just for time's sake, I'm going to move on to the next section, but feel free if anything comes to mind to drop it in the chat. I want to make sure that we have a chance to cover everything today. So the next update that's going to be going live next week, actually, in the DESSA system, so your teachers will start seeing it. We're excited to announce DESSA Insights Plus, which is our AI-powered assistant in the system that's going to help teachers make more informed decisions with their DESSA data and just help them kind of navigate the platform better. So basically what we did is we interviewed tons of different DESSA teachers over the past year or so and wanted to make sure that we really understood what challenges they were facing as they were not just completing ratings, but then deciding on the kind of next steps they need to take after they have DESSA data in their account. And we identified some key challenges. One that I'm sure everyone here is familiar with, unfortunately, is that a lot of teachers feel like they're experiencing some data overload, not necessarily just with DESSA data, but just with all of the different data inputs that they have to consider as they're working with students. So we wanted to make sure that this AI tool is able to simplify that data into very brief and clear summaries that teachers can really quickly understand um, without taking a ton of time to sift through all of the different reports. And really why this is so important is just making sure that as those teachers are taking action with the DESSA data, that they really understand very clearly what the recommended next steps should be. They've completed the ratings, but now they want to make sure that they can develop these skills with their students. And this is going to kind of add that so what and now what layer into the DESSA data so that they know exactly where to go. And then just in general, helping them navigate the DESSA system better. When we were interviewing people, a lot of them just truly didn't understand or have awareness about all of the different resources and insights that are available in the platform. So what does this look like? This is just an example of what an interaction with DESSA Insights Plus might look like. So you'll see that they'll get prompted with just some introductory information, letting know that they have access to this tool and some general guidance on where they should look after they've completed ratings. So you'll see here, like the assistant is going to point them in the direction of the Data and Insights tab, just making sure that they know that they can access more detailed information in that part of the system. And then in the top right here, you'll see some examples of some automatically generated prompts that DESSA Insights Plus is going to put in front of the teachers. So if they want to learn more about their students in general, or if they specifically want to know what should I do next with this data, those prompts will be there, as well as just making sure they understand the overall purpose of why their school or district has prioritized using the DESSA. Um, so in the example here, if they did ask, how can I actually use this to improve student outcomes? It's going to combine a little bit of context with some research and some evidence on why this is important. And then it's also going to direct them to specific reports, in this case, the competencies report, so that they can actually see which areas their classroom needs the most support in. And then really importantly, it's also going to remind them and guide them to those strategies or foundational practices, or in some cases, maybe even tier two intervention programs. So there will be more information about this coming out soon. It is scheduled to go live next week, and we'll be sharing out information about this in our DESSA customer newsletter as well. But just wanted to give you a quick preview of that it's going to be available this school year. It's very exciting. And we also, in that same vein, wanted to make sure that everyone knew, since we're talking about teacher engagement and making sure that they are ready to kind of hit the ground running this school year, we do have an upcoming office hours session. And this is kind of like the practice that I'm recommending here, is that this is such a good opportunity to meet with other schools and districts that are using the DESSA to learn from each other. Um, and there's going to be more time to actually talk through different questions and develop strategies together. So that upcoming office hours that's really focusing on building buy-in with teachers is scheduled for September 23rd at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. And just a quick reminder, if you're ever wondering which sessions we have coming up, go to this support portal and just search for live sessions, and it'll have all of the upcoming registration links in there. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Lisa now.
Thanks, Jim. Well, I'm actually so excited that I was honored to be able to present this next section to you, because as someone who has led this work in a division, one of the things I'm very, very cognizant of is I want to be able to actually use data to make good things happen for kids. So we have to actually use the data that we have to be able to then figure out the so what. And so I'm really excited that we have now updated our strategies and foundational practices so that we have our educators who can then use that information to support students where they really need it most. All right, so let's dig in. So, the first thing we want to really focus on is the fact that, again, we pride ourselves with honoring your feedback. So, we heard and we listened. So, based on educator feedback, DESSA strategies and foundational practices have been updated to ensure that they are easier to implement, limiting prep time that's needed, and being able to hyper focus on key things that you're going to need to use the strategies as effectively as you can. So here's the roadmap, right, for when those updates will be available. The newly designed foundational practices are in the DESSA system now. The competency aligned strategies are being updated as we speak in waves, with the first portion set to be updated by October 2nd and the remainder in an ongoing fashion this fall. So I would keep an eye out for that customer newsletter so you can keep an eye on when those are being updated. So let's talk about what that actually is going to look like though. So again, we want to make sure that you're able to use the resources within the DESSA system. So there are some key things that we made changes to. The first is really looking at reducing the amount of text within the strategy. We want to make them shorter so that there's less prep time. So we want to be able to go from data to action very seamlessly. We also streamlined key messages within those strategies, removing any repetitive verbiage or anything that really gets in your way of really getting to the strategy for your students. We also grade banded a bit more. So, for example, the suggested language for the educator is a bit simpler now for the elementary strategies, and any student-facing handouts have slightly lower reading levels. Again, we want to make sure that this is as accessible as possible. And any implementation considerations have been woven throughout the strategy as appropriate. We really, again want to make this streamlined so that it's easier to implement. We also want to make sure that it's focused, very focused, because we're trying to make sure that we reduce that mental load as much as possible. But bottom line, less text, more streamlined, reducing your mental load. Our goal is to make the strategies easier to find, easier to navigate, and easier to implement. So let's talk best practices. So oftentimes we're asked how to best use the strategies within the DESSA system. And in all honesty, it truly depends on existing variables within your current context. However, regardless of the context, you're going to want to align DESSA strategies with current school or district goals and priorities, which is why I love the fact that Jim asked that question earlier in the session. So maybe your district is putting a greater emphasis on your portrait of a graduate. If so, align those DESSA competencies and those strategies with those portrait of a graduate skills and start there. This will allow you to monitor how you're doing fostering the skills that are going to be critical for your portrait of a graduate. Maybe your district is prioritizing an emphasis on fostering skills that will support positive student behavior. Again, if that's the case, take a look at your spring DESSA data potentially to find out what competencies should be prioritized and make sure those skills are integrated within your positive behavior support system. You know, we know that educators have a lot on their plates, right? And if we want them to use this critical data point to foster all of those important goals for students and to make their instruction more impactful, we've got to look at our systems that are in place to support teachers in using their data and planning. So do your educators need professional learning on how to understand their data and identify next steps? Well, you're in luck. In just a little bit, we'll review those training options available. But let's take a moment and think about systems. So where are there existing opportunities for educators to engage in data dialogue and instructional planning? I'd love to hear about what organizers or planning tools do educators have to walk them through their DESSA data and instructional planning. Now we're going to put this question in the chat so that we can really start to hear from each other about what are you currently using? Where are your systems that are going to support your educators? And I would love to just kind of see that populate as we continue to talk. But making sure that staff, bottom line, are given time, materials, and resources to use the DESSA data and the strategies that are at their fingertips in the system will undoubtedly build their collective educator self-efficacy and their data literacy. And that's what we all want. We want to make sure that educators are able to use the tools that you have so wisely acquired in order to support students, staff, and families. So I invite you to talk about those systems that are in place. But in the meantime, I would love to pass this on to Katie to talk about training.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. McHugh. I am very excited to talk about training. I know training is either something that's been on educators and administrators' minds the last few weeks, so you're getting ready for trainings as your educators come back to school, or maybe you're in those trainings right now. I love DESSA training so much that I wanted to be part of the DESSA training team. And so we're going to talk about some of our enhancements that we have this upcoming school year. So we are going to cover a few different options that we have. But first, let's talk about why is training very important, especially for DESSA implementation. So ensuring that all users have opportunities to learn about the DESSA through training opportunities is necessary for this to be successful implementation throughout the school year. Whether you're new to the DESSA or maybe you've used the DESSA for several years, training is always a really good option to consider throughout the school year. So training provides users with a clear understanding of how to use the assessment products, some of which are new coming this year, and the instructional materials that Dr. Muku just reviewed with us. So these are essential for ensuring accuracy and reliability in collecting the data. DESSA training helps users to understand how to collect that data and interpret that data and avoid any potential errors or biases. So what's our best practice for when training? If you want to go to the next slide there. We highlighted here the best practice to be ensure that training is a priority. And you can do that by selecting a modality that works best for your district or your program or your school specifically. So while training is recommended throughout the whole school year, we're looking at specifically when we're getting started and then when the data is actually collected and how we can use that data to support student growth. So you may be familiar with, but we'll recap what we have options as far as training. So we have two main options. We have self-paced online DESSA training courses and facilitator-led DESSA trainings, either virtual or on-site. So we're going to take a look at a couple of details for both of those options for the 2025-2026 school year. We'll start with the DESSA training courses. Now, this is an option that's available to all users, and it's built directly within the DESSA system under the training tab. So if you haven't been there, I really encourage you to go right to that tab and check out what the new options are, because we're very excited to have expanded this training catalog and resource bank for all of our users. So a quick recap here, our courses are all self-paced, they're interactive learning experiences, and they provide all of the information and resources that you need to get started with the DESSA, collect data, and then use that DESSA data. We're very excited for this back to school year that we have an updated dashboard as well that makes it very easy for users to locate the trainings that they're either interested in, that they want to support their teachers in recommending that they complete before they collect DESSA data, and then just additional topics that have come up. Our team is aware are topics that throughout the school year would be very helpful to have as refreshers. Those are our brand new mini course modules. So when you land on your data dashboard, you'll see the recommended trainings. That's that first bucket that we recommend all of our users complete, depending on what product that you are using. And these have all been updated for this back to school year. So while you might be well into your DESSA implementation for several years, do encourage you as a best practice to have your staff go back in and complete those modules as a really good refresher with updated information and language and resources that they could use within their implementation. There's also those mini added courses, the mini courses that will focus on common implementation topics such as progress monitoring and communicating about the DESSA. What's really exciting is that all of these courses offer a variety of modes for learning, and they have built-in implementation tools and templates that you can use throughout the school year to make your implementation as easy and as successful as possible there. The next option is those facilitator-led trainings. So we do have two options here, virtual and on-site sessions. These are facilitator-led by our DESSA team, and these are customized sessions that can be purchased through your Riverside Partnership Manager. So if you're unfamiliar who that person is, we'll share some contact information out after the session, but you would be reaching out to that Riverside Partnership Manager to schedule one of these sessions. There's a recommended list of available live trainings, and that's going to be on a resource we'll also include after the session, which is the DESSA the DESSA ARC of Professional Learning resource. Now on this resource, you'll have information about not only the self-paced courses, but also those live webinar sessions. And we have our standard introductory trainings, but a lot of new topics have also been added. A couple include using DESSA data, impact and action, which is a deeper dive into using DESSA data, as well as using DESSA data within the MTSS framework. And that's a very common topic that we have had requests for. So I'm very excited about that session being available. This training option has a lot of benefits. In a live training, whether it's virtual or in person, you're building buy-in with your staff, you're fostering those connections while they're learning together about the DESSA. It also allows for opportunities for, like we've done today on the session, input from your staff. You maybe address concerns as they come up. Again, really building that cohesive group that's going to work together to support this implementation. So these sessions allow administrators to set expectations and implementation details can be shared, and inviting your staff to really engage in the process. We will highlight just a couple other opportunities that are available. These are going to be located under the training tab as well. You could also find some of these articles in the support portal, but there are additional resources that are available to support your training and your overall implementation. So like I said, the support portal houses an abundance of articles, and these can range from how to use DESSA data to finding those templates, highlight different features and products in the DESSA system, and you would just search for your topic and explore those available articles. There's also the monthly office hours, I think that Jim had mentioned earlier in the session. It's a really great way to support your ongoing training throughout the school year. Our team hosts monthly sessions on a designated topic, and then they provide a 15-minute overview and 45 minutes of a Q&A time. Finally, there's an on-demand video library that we also have available under the training tab, and that offers short training videos, anywhere from 3 to 7 minutes, on a variety of categories and topics, all designed to, again, support your DESSA implementation. You can access this library through that training tab, and feel free to share any of those videos out with your staff and with your other stakeholders as well. So with that, I hope to see you in some live trainings. If not, I'll be looking for y'all's names in those self-paced courses, but I'll hand it back to Jim to continue our session.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. So we've been talking a lot about how the changes and updates that we've implemented for this school year are based on your feedback. And we thought this would be a good segue after Katie shared some of the new topics that are going to be included for training and professional development opportunities this year. I wanted to just take a moment to pause now and see if there are any topics that are top of mind for you that you think would be really valuable for you and your team for us to develop in the future. So these could be topics for brand new trainings. You saw some of the different modalities that we offer. So maybe it's just a quick on-demand video, a training tip that you think would be beneficial for your team, or even something that we might consider for a future office hours session. I know we don't have a ton of time, but I'm going to give just a second here to pause and let everyone think about that. And it's totally fine if something doesn't come to mind right away. Just please know that our ears are always open and we're always looking for that type of feedback, because that's exactly what informs all of these exciting changes that we're rolling out at the beginning of the school year and sometimes even in the middle of the school year as well. So feel free to reach out to us at any time if anything does come up and you think, you know what, I'm getting a lot of questions from my team about this, or something that we've found to be successful and I'd like to share with others. Feel free to share that with us at any time. I've got one final quick update for everyone here. You might know, especially if you've been using the DESSA for a while now, that we had a brief period of time where you weren't able to submit parent ratings, unfortunately. We're excited because we released the DESSA 2 last year, but what that meant is we didn't have up-to-date parent norms at the time. So I'm excited to announce that now that functionality is back in the DESSA system. So if you are looking to collect rating data from parents and guardians for the DESSA 2, so for students in kindergarten through 8th grade, this is now available in the system. If you go to your admin menu, you'll see that there is a parent and guardian rating option. So basically all you have to do is the parent or guardian would fill out the DESSA 2 paper form that's available in the support portal, and then you can input their responses directly from your account and associate them with the student, so those results show up on that student's profile. And like with many of the things we've talked about today, if you have any other questions about that, always a good idea to check the support portal. There's step-by-step instructions in there on how to submit a DESSA 2 parent rating, but feel free to reach out to your Riverside Partnership Manager or your success team member if you need a little bit more support with that. And just to wrap up, to be respectful of everyone's time, we actually did a pretty good job. We crammed in a lot of updates in a relatively short amount of time. But just to make sure that we're continuing this conversation as you're preparing to launch your DESSA program this year, just some quick reminders and next steps. So we will be following up with all of the resources that were covered today in the follow-up email, along with the recording of today's session. And then quick plug again for the September office hours that's coming up next month. And we also just put the support portal article into the What's New section in the DESSA support portal that has a full overview of all of the updates that we covered today. Just good reminder to check that throughout the year if you're wondering what's new in the system. And as I said before, just please feel free to lean on your Riverside team here on our end. If you have any questions about your DESSA account, any of the new resources, or if you have feedback to give us, we always love to hear it. So I want to just say thank you to my colleagues, Katie, Lisa, and Jennifer, and thank you so much to everyone who joined us today. I know we are a little bit over our scheduled time now, so we won't keep you any longer, but thank you again, and we hope to see you soon.